Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the Red Earth Productions studios for another edition of YBMcast. And today we've got some perspective with my good buddy, Mitch Thomas. Mitch, always a pleasure.
How are you doing?
I am fabulous.
Okay. I am close to fabulous. I'm just fab. I'm Fab 5.
Fab? So is that like...
That was a
so
play
we
on
have
March
fab
Madness.
and fabulous? So is that different levels?
I have no idea. It's like sus and suspect.
So we're going to get into some perspective here. We got the Arch Madness coming up. We wanted to. It's kind of like a PSA, and I go through these things, and just because I think it's so necessary, I saw on Game 7's Facebook post they have a great picture of a couple of good Blues. Some folks put in there, called a great game. I know that calls don't always go and somebody goes, oh man, that guy's horrible and this and that. Well, we want to talk a little bit as we're ramping into the season. High school season's starting. I've heard it in the stands already. I think we need to be a little careful. I don't have a problem with a fan going, come on, Blue, you missed that. Come on, call a strike. I really don't. And I'm an umpire, and I've been an umpire, and I've been on the field when I've missed a call or when it's a close call and you call it against that person, against that team, and you hear it. Oh, come on. I always felt like if I was an umpire and I didn't get a few of those, you weren't doing your job right.
Well, that may be true.
Because you're
always wrong.
You got
no matter
close
what.
calls. You have close calls. So you're always going to have that ooh and ah at some point. It's what you got to take care of. You're there. But as parents, we need to understand these are people too with kids. They're family people. They're just people, and they're not out there to root to make your team lose.
I have never ran across an umpire that just looks at another team and goes, yep, I want that team to lose today.
Right?
I never see that. This is interesting to have those conversations because they are. And just like our families as coaches, they might be in the stands. They might be out there because that may be the only time they get to see them in the weekend. So they go, have a lunch with them at the park and watch a game and go home. And you never know if they're a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old kid or somebody that can be influenced is out there just hearing their dad or mom or sister, somebody out there umpiring and just getting belittled,
right?
Because a call didn't go your way. And I feel bad for umpires because at the end of the day, like you always seem to be wrong, and because you can never win. It seems like you can never win if you make it the one call. It's against the another team or whatever. It is hard to do, and especially since some of these umpires are probably umpiring 4 or 5 games a day. 6-7 hours of umpiring with very little meals in between. And,
and I know people say, well, get somebody else. But you have to understand, some of that's by design, not by design, it's by necessity.
Well, we don't have enough umpires.
Because everybody knows there's an umpire, referee, whatever sport it is, there's a shortage. And it's because we have done this to ourselves, in my opinion, my estimation. And here's the other thing too, folks. I'm sure we've all been guilty of these things. I'm sure I have. And we have to take a pause and think. I'm not saying you can't go, come on, Blue. I mean, that's part of it. Okay, fine. But remember, we're following people to the parking lots. We're threatening their life, their livelihood. We're cussing and ranting, and you got 10, 11, 10, 9, 8-year-olds over here listening to this. And what are we presenting as a community? I'm telling you, we have to think about these things. I really believe that. If you've got a beef or something like that, go to the tournament director. Go to the coach. Talk to him. I guarantee you the tournament directors, and I know these people personally, want to take care of situations because they want their tournaments to run well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that any of the sanctions of tournaments that we have in our area ever want to put a product out on the field that is not good. at the end of the day. I mean, how are you going to get coaches to come back if your umpires are in the stands, focused? And it goes both ways. It does. But as parents, I get frustrated as a coach. Let me do all the talking. I will support my team as needed. If I feel that an umpire is maybe given a few calls, I may chirp a little bit because I want to get it back to my team and let my team know that I'm supporting them. I don't do this maliciously. Right. I'm not going to go up there and
that's gamesmanship.
Yeah, I don't go up there to tell an umpire after the game we're going to go meet out in a parking lot because he blew a call. My team lost. My team lost because we didn't make enough plays. We should never put it in the umpire's hands. Our parents need to know that too. Fix some of the things that we can control. Like that's what we need to do. The things that we cannot control. Yeah. Things we cannot control is umpire decisions, coaches' decisions, your players' decisions.
Right,
you know what I mean? At the end of the day, we cannot control certain things as parents. So let's just sit back, let the coaches do their job. I don't argue with umpires unless I need to.
Right.
And it is usually to stick up for my team. You saw it this past weekend. I had some words with an umpire, but I thought it was fair. I thought it was at that time necessary. After the game, it's fine. We move on and it's nothing, no big deal in a parking lot. We just chirp just to, get it back. And that's okay to me. Just like you said, it's okay to heckle, but as an umpire, don't put your ears in the stands looking for reasons to go against that, because that just breeds the negativity from the stands back, and then it's just ongoing.
As an umpire, you have to be able to let that stuff, it's part of the game in that respect, even from a coach. And if you feel like a coach is saying too much, stop the game, give them a warning and set it down. That's enough, coach. But it has to be you settled in and understanding, I'm here to do a job. That's all I'm focused on. We're there as an official to officiate the game, to translate, interpret the rules for people. And here's the other thing, parents and coaches, I will say this. I don't know how many times I've heard from a gallery and even the dugout, go read the rule book. Officials have to read the rule book. They have to take tests.
Can I ask this? Can I add?
Go ahead.
How about the parent read the rule book? How about the coaching
that's
staff?
kind of what I was getting to.
Okay, sorry.
So you're fine. You. So go right ahead. You answer exactly right. We should.
There are so many rules that, when I keep a rule book with me so that when something happens in a game, I flip to the rule book.
And you've told me this before, yeah.
And I'll go, okay, what is the rule?
Yeah.
And then, some of this, when you open the book, it goes, oh, that's a judgment, which I didn't know that was a judgment. I just thought it was kind of black and white, whatever. Nope, it's up to the umpire. That was the umpire's decision. I close the book. I live with it. Yeah. And then I'll go to the umpire maybe between innings and I'll ask the questions, because what helps me help my athletes is if I understand certain situations, because the game is played between the lines that include umpires. And so, I didn't realize one year that you don't have to slide at second base for a double play, right? And you can get hit and not be called out as long as you don't impede the defender.
That's correct.
Maybe impede's the right word, right? Isn't that what they use in the book?
It's obstruction.
Obstruction. So these things, I'm like, I've always taught my athletes just to throw if the kid's standing up. Well, that's not real, and it cost us some runs before. And so when we were doing this in college. And so it just, again, we need to know the rule book first. I don't know if any of my parents, and excuse me if they have read the rule book.
But then you get into high school rules too. Now, high school rules, it's not a slight, but you can't, it's kind of these gray areas. And this is what's the troubling to me. Either make a slide rule or don't. But you can't have both. You can't, and we live in these judgments of gray areas. And that's where the problems begin. And the book, I've read plenty of I've read plenty of rule books, baseball from high school to the major league and then there's other rules within certain sanctioning bodies that they tweak for their groups. And this is the thing. Do you know if you're playing by major American League rules or whatever major league rules or high school rules? And then so you need to look at the NFHS rule book, National Federation of High Schools rule book. And so you have that as well. So this is what you're dealing with at times. And most people, it gets convoluted because we don't know which one we're playing by. And so you need to understand that as you go into a tournament as well. These are all things that we need to understand. And so basically, though, this is what it boils down to. I'm going to tell on myself.
Okay.
When I first started umpiring, and Justin knows this, I've told this before. When I first started umpiring, I was doing it for the SBA. I'm reading the rule book, but, didn't know this one, probably read through it, didn't remember it, whatnot. St. Peter's Athletic Association, I'm in the field. It's like 10U, 11U, something like this. Kids on the mound, on the rubber, in a stretch position, drops the ball. Well, according to the rule book, if it doesn't go past the white line, it's a balk. If it goes past the white line, which are the lines from home to first, home to third, it's a ball. Okay? He drops it, it dribbles back behind there. Well, according to the rule book, that's a balk. Dale Rothermick, who's been around the baseball community for a long time, he had his team. It was his team that was up to bat, the Lookouts. He calls out to me and he says, "Brian, that's a balk." I'm like, no. And I stuck to my call and whatnot, and he smiled. And Dale's one of those guys. To his credit, he just said, "Okay, you're wrong." I said,
wrong.
"Okay, all right," and we went on. See, as an umpire, I took that. Okay, I believed in my call at that time. But the thing that I did is I went after the game and I looked at the rule book and I was like, "Oh, I was wrong." I corrected that. And it made me think about making sure that I understood the rule book. And as officials, this is what we need to do. We need to make sure we understand the rule book. I saw him the next year at a meeting for teams and whatnot. And I saw him and he smiled at me. He said, "Hey, you doing?" I smiled. He goes, "You looked, didn't you?" He knew it. I was like, "Yeah."
That's because you had a grin on your face.
I said, "My bad, man." He goes, No, I'm glad you went and looked and whatnot." That was the thing. So if we would take that information and help each other in these things, this is the perspective we really need to bring. Rather than screaming and hollering at people, rather than calling names, rather than follow them out to a parking lot, give a little bit. Understand, and let's help the officials too on the other side. As officials, we need to be aware of things. We're going to miss calls. And especially some of the guys at the lower age levels are out there. They're working hard. They're not out there to make your child lose the game.
They don't want to do that.
Let's bring some perspective to it.
Yeah, they don't want to do that. It just goes. I know this may be extreme here, but you never see an umpire go to your household and tell you that you do things wrong as a parent.
Right.
No, and I understand that may be very different. The context to me though is what are we really challenging these umpires for like that?
Right.
It's a kid's game, and so we're telling these kids it's okay just to say whatever you want without consequence.
Yeah.
And, as I grew up, if you had these kinds of conversations, there was consequences. Now there's not, and because if I kick a kid off the team because of his parent acting a particular way in the stands, all they do is go somewhere else and do the same thing. There's no winning. These umpires are working hard. They're sweating just as much as everybody else. They're tired of the heat, not right now. It's windy,
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think let's give these guys a little bit of respect. And one of the things for me, I love calling umpires by their first name. Yeah. I think right off the bat, it gives me an opportunity to gain a little bit of trust that when I do chirp, or if I chirp, I usually probably chirp at something. But that is just because I'm trying to figure things out. There's a way I think you can ask umpires questions. Hey, is that the top of the zone? If it's a high strike, you think it's a high strike? Is that the top of the zone? Nope, you got another ball.
And here's the thing, and this is something that I think is very interesting, and I think coaches should understand this. You can't, according to the rule book, you don't argue balls and strikes. It's an automatic ejection, okay? You have a catcher there, right? Why don't you teach your catcher to be honest and start talking to you about where he's calling as an umpire, even at the lower levels, I talk to the catchers all the time. Hey, that's a little bit outside. You bring that in a little bit more, I'll give it to you. Teaching them how to work with an umpire. Because these kids at 9, 10, 11, 12, they're not just painting corners. It's just not the reality of it. Give me a little bit more. I'm not going to call it on the chalk over there, 5 feet off, 5 inches, 6 inches off the plate. I'm not. Bring it in just a little bit more. I'll give you that. If he can be consistent enough around that area, I'll give those strikes. Because we understand the level of play. And teaching and having coaches and umpires work together that way, communicate with your catcher, teach them to do that. Well, my catcher, then this is called development. This is what development is about.
That's why you let your catchers call the game.
And if you're coaching, you want that. If you've got a kid that really understands it, and I've been with some really good catchers. They walk out, they pound your fist, Blue, my name's so-and-so, good to meet you and whatnot. And you can talk with them and you talk through a game with them. You know how much easier that works, man? I'll tell you, it's one of the best things in the world for an umpire with that relationship. Hey, no, it's off the plate. He goes, Blue, I got to get that call. All right, I know. Give me some. And you get a little honesty, man, I missed that one. All right, Blue.
It goes a long ways. As a kid that caught, and I still see umpires that when I caught in high school that still remember me from having those conversations, and I could sit back there and have conversation looking at my pitchers, and I've had hitters look at me like, shut up, like, why are you still chirping?
I'm trying to concentrate.
And I'm like, no, man, he missed this call. And I was like, we've been there all day. You've given me that 3 out of the 4 pitches in that spot. And I was like, why'd you win that last one? Or whatever. And I'm not arguing the balls and strikes. I'm just wanting to get information.
Yeah.
Because if he tells me I can get another inch, I'm going to go as far as I can until he says that's too far.
Exactly. And I've seen catchers set up out far, and then they start inching themselves back in to where you call it a strike. That's where they stop.
Yep.
I mean, that's a good catcher. I'm going to start here. I'm going to see what he's going to give me.
But that does start with the umpire, because you can't do that as a coach, yelling from your chair across the diamond saying, hey, get out as far as you can. Let's see how far we can stretch them. No, you don't do that. You umpire, you tell them before you go out there, this is what we're doing. This is the game plan. Then you work back in. And anybody that has caught and played at those levels understand that those conversations happen, and they're usually good.
I like talking about fishing too. I've talked to this one kid, catcher, man. We were chatting up about fishing all day.
So this is kind of cool. So my daughter caught, and I caught. So in high school, I had a child, and I can remember sitting back at a game, and my daughter must have been just a year old. This is my senior year. And she's on the fence yelling daddy or whatever. And he looks over to me and he goes, is that your child? I was like, yeah, not too many, 17-year-old kids have babies, but, I did. And so it was funny because years down the road, he was behind the plate with her and he was telling stories about how I would have conversations with him and I would be upset with him about certain things, and because he umpired the Suburban North a lot.
Sure.
And so, here he is doing softball many moons later, and I just think, well, it's not many moons, but it's just 15 years.
Few moons.
But it's just neat to have those relationships, because they don't just stop with between the lines. I mean, if these guys are behind you a lot,
yeah,
you will have those conversations. And I mean, there's been times where I've blocked a baseball and, little one slipped out, and the umpire would give me a hard time, and, he'd, crack a little joke, and, you could do those things those days. And, now everything is seems like it's a wristband, and there's no control back there between umpires and catchers. It doesn't seem like relationships are being built. And I think you can have that everywhere, important. Though,
yeah.
It just doesn't have to stop with the guy behind the plate. Why can't you be a guy at first base that is chirping the umpire, and not in a negative way, having a conversation with the umpire there, and then when he moves to the middle of the field, why can't your shortstop say, hey, Blue, to the left, to the right, and he's like, well, hey, I need to be in this position, this type of hitter, and then maybe you need to move. There's just some of the things that I think is IQ can be built there too.
I love this conversation. We're going to get into that. That'll be the next one. I love this thought because are we developing these kids to understand how to communicate on the field with the umpires? I love that because it's not just behind the plate, but like you said, in that moment, whatnot. I love that thought process because I think that's on the coaches to really teach the kids how to develop that relationship, how we communicate. It's not just communicating about, hey, I'm going over here, but how are we communicating on a whole level, talking to the umpires and whatnot? You see it at the professional level. And guys that do it, but are we doing it at that whole level? So I think that's important.
And the right way.
And the right way.
We had a situation last night where this is for high school baseball, where the umpire was high in his zone. He loved the ball up, and he would call letters, maybe a few above the letters.
Sure.
And some of the boys would get upset. You could visually tell that they had some poor body language. And when I see that, I'm just assuming as a coach that umpire is going to give a ball off the plate, just like you don't stand up the umpire, right? But I looked at the kids last night and I said, why don't you just ask them, hey, is that the top of the zone?
Right.
And you're not arguing balls and strikes,
No.
but you're asking him, hey, is that the top of the zone? Nope, you got another ball. Then you know what you need to attack if the guy goes up again. And so you can learn a lot too.
They do that at the major league level. You see them back out of the plate and you see the mounds moving. That's what they're saying. Is that where it's at? Is that it?
Yep.
These are questions and conversations. Absolutely.
And umpires will not get upset.
Shouldn't get upset. That's a question.
I guess some do, but
as an umpire, we shouldn't. Take it, move on. Now, if it gets carried away, then you'll know. But if you're developing those relationships as well as an umpire, then you have this communication level, and it keeps the game moving in a direction it needs to go in a positive way.
Yeah, and there's nonverbals too to this, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you a kid that gets a bad call on him and starts smashing on his cleats or slams his bat on the ground or something ridiculous. That's a nonverbal communication that you're unhappy. And so again, play the game between the lines.
I'd rather him say something like, hey, come on, Blue, where was that? Or hey, is that, whatever the question may be, ask me a question. I'll tell you, rather than slamming your equipment, outwardly showing things like that, let's continue to play the game. I understand if you get frustrated things. I get all that. But anyway, all right, good conversation, man. That was good.
It's been a long time since I've been in baseball, and I tell you, I'm happy to be back. I've been back in baseball for 2 years now, and it is exciting to be a part of what's happening in our youth and communities.
I'm looking forward to the year. Going to be a fun year with Game 7 baseball. I love working with Dave and Dave. Going to be out there. We're going to be out on the field today, watching the 14Us. We got, it's going to be fun.
I think there's like 50-something teams in this weekend's tournament,
there is,
right?
dude.
Something like that.
There is. We're going to have a lot of fun. Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. I didn't throw up my comment deal. I should have. Justin, did you put up the comments below? Good. Hopefully we get some comments. I don't know if we will or not. We'll see. Tell us what you think. We appreciate it. In fact, there's always a place for a conversation as long as we're having a conversation. And I want that. We want those comments so we can open up the dialogue, have the conversation, because it is so important to bring some perspective to what we're doing in our communities with our kids and the people that are a part of this thing we call youth baseball. So everybody have a great day in the Lord. And all you pitchers, keep throwing strikes, and you hitters,
hit them where they ain't.
Doubles and dingers.
Doubles and dingers.
Always a fun one. I like that. I'm trying to get him to say that more and more.
I'm just going to say exit speeds of like 190. That's what we're going to do. Doubles and dingers. Exit speeds of 190.
Oh.
All right.
That's good. We'll see you next time.